Hey, how we doing? How's everyone doing today? It's Sunday again, so it's a week on from my last video, and today, because it's Sunday, is brisket day. It's time for some beef, although we're not going to be roasting it like many people will be today. There's a bit of a break in the weather just at the moment, so I've taken the opportunity to come out and start setting myself up. We've got a pretty bog standard rolled brisket joint that I'll show you in a second how to prepare, but in the meantime, time to get that lit. And to do that, as always, you just have to start with your chimney and get some hot coals into there. Back in a mo. Alright, so let's see what we are dealing with here. We've got a British brisket joint, which, as I said before, these are normally pre-rolled in a really long roll and then they're just cut back to make joints, and that's exactly the sort of thing that you'll see for a pot roast, or even a fairly low temperature Sunday roast. The trouble with some of these is they're actually skimmed of too much fat, so that's the one thing we'll have to work with, and I'll show you that when we unpack it. But we were 12 quid, just under 2 kilos, so just over 4 pounds. So about an hour and a half per pound. That roughly gives you your cooking time. We're probably going to be looking at about 5 hours for this today, which is a really manageable time. Some of the bigger briskets, obviously, the benefits being that they are bigger, have more fat on them. The downsides are they don't fit onto the grill that we use. You normally have to cut them up to get them to fit, and they take a lot longer. So we're going to get this open and see what we've got. Alright, so today's brisket looks like this. It's a rolled joint. It's bound through the middle with those string loops. What we're going to do is take those off. I did do a brisket a couple of years back where I just left it all rolled, but I think you need to kind of flatten it out to get it to cook nice and evenly. And we can prepare it pretty much like a normal US brisket. So what we do, if you take these off, we'll flatten it out, and you'll see it starts to look a little bit more like the shape that you're used to seeing from the US. Okay, here we go. This is the unrolled brisket, and you'll see the grain of the meat actually runs from back to front this way through. So I actually think this is probably a really nice piece of what would be termed as the flat normally. It does build up a little bit towards this end, and it does look a little bit more like the point, but overall it's a really consistent sort of grain running through the whole thing. There's very little fat or connective tissues apart from a little bit at the end here. There's really nothing else going on through there that I can see, so it's going to cook really nicely. But the one thing we do need to be really careful of is that it sort of doesn't dry out. We need to make sure that it does retain a lot of moisture. So hopefully I'm going to show you how we do that. So firstly, I'm just going to pat this down because I've given it a quick rinse since I've unrolled it. I'm just going to pat it down, make sure it takes off all the excess moisture with some kitchen towel. And then when we've done that, we can get to seasoning it, because the seasoning will stick onto it a lot better. So there's a lot of talk on a lot of forums, and in the videos you'll see about the best way to prepare a brisket. Most of them, the sort of standard Texas style brisket, is only salt and pepper, which I've got mixed up here. I've actually done, I mix all of my own rubs, and I put them into, although it says Cajun on there, this was a Cajun spice rub at one point, but I've pre-mixed that and just put it into this as an easy shaker. I tend to do that. I make my rubs up in batch, and then I can then decant them into smaller shakers like this one. This is going to be the like the barbecue season we put on next. So I'm going to go against what some of the purists might say. I'm going to put a layer of all-purpose sort of seasoning down, which is salt, pepper, garlic. So to go ahead and do that now. Just give it a nice, good, even, but nice, thick, generous layer. Okay, so I'm going to go and do that now and pop back in a second. Alright, there's a lovely, nice even coating of that gone onto the top side, the fat side now. I've done the edges as well, so we'll just flip it over. There you go, you can see how the the grain of the meat is basically running through this way. So when we go to cut it, we're going to have to sort of look to cut it long ways. What I'll probably do this towards the end is, because there is a bit more of a sort of a fat mass towards this one end of it, I might actually towards the end just carve it, and then we can do some burnt ends, and then we've got a bit more manageable sort of slices for the brisket slices that way. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead and put some more seasoning on this side. Okay, there's now a really nice even covering of that SPG seasoning, salt, pepper, garlic. That just needs to do its work for a little while now. I'm going to let that go for probably about 10 minutes just to start penetrating, get the salt working through, get the moisture raising to the surface. You should be able to see I've got it all the way along the sides as well, so just try and get everywhere covered. So this is actually what we'll probably, this is the bottom piece now, so when we turn it over to grill it, it's going to go fat top up. There's, as I said, not as much fat on there as I'd like. You'd want as much as you can kind of get away with, normally about 1/4 of an inch as a minimum, just so that it melts through the cooking and kind of helps to self-baste. But we will wrap this in an attempt to keep it nice and moist. It's worked well for me in the past, so hopefully it should do today. In terms of the actual SPG seasoning, I just take quite a coarsely ground pepper, and I normally run it 2 parts ground pepper, just normally less than 2, probably 1.5 parts of salt, because the trouble with salt is that if you get it too fine, if it's the pouring salt, then it can really oversalt it. So yeah, 2 parts of black pepper, quite coarsely ground, probably 2 parts of coarse salt, but I'd say 1.5 more so on if you just go with table salt, free running salt, to 1 part garlic granules. The most important thing I can say about that, just while I think about it, is to get these garlic granules, not, I've got some up here, garlic salt. Don't make that mistake, because you will oversalt it. You're basically going to add more and more salt, and it's just the flavour you want, not the salt. I'll do something about my my rubs and preparations in another video, but this is going to sit, and then we're going to go with an all-purpose barbecue rub. All right, this is my standard barbecue rub that I kind of use for most things. It goes on the chicken. I tweak it a little bit to put it on the pork. Put a lot more sugar on it when we put it into rubs for pork, for ribs and things. But this as the base is essentially, it's a little bit more salt and pepper, cumin in there, going in there, and smoked paprika. They're the key ingredients. Got a little bit of garlic in there as well. I'll definitely do a video that shows you my ratio, but you can see all sorts of different recipes for this online. I'm just going to go and give this a good layer now. And as I say, the purists might not like this, but there are a lot of Americans that do, and I definitely prefer my barbecue brisket just to have a little hint of that barbecue rub taste to it as well. I mean, the beef still shines through if you don't overdo it. So I've done that side. I'm going to do just the front and back and the edges, then flip it over, we'll do the top side, and then we'll be able to get it onto the grill. Right, there's the lighter cube. We've got all of our coal banked up on that side. That should see us through the cook. Probably looking at about 5 hours today, so I'll do a bit of a calculation of that in a mo. You see I've got my vents wide open down there. I'll shut those down to probably about halfway quarter when we actually get to getting the hot coals on top of here. So yeah, the place where the chimney is at the moment, that's going to be the side, the cold side if you like, so that's where the brisket's going to end up, just sort of like all the way along there. This side's going to be the hot side, so you're going to get that indirect heat coming through and washing through the kettle. And we're also going to put some smoke in there. I haven't decided yet what we're going to use today, but it's got to be something fairly robust, so probably some oak, I think. I've got some whiskey oak barrel chunks as well. So I'll be back to show you how we're going to prepare this brisket in a moment. Alright, so we're just waiting for the coals to start getting up to temperature now. They're just over there in the starter. We've got the rubbed brisket ready to go. I took the brisket out first thing this morning and let it just come up to room temperature. So that means obviously from the cooking process point of view, hasn't got as far to go, hasn't got as much to do. We've got some wood chunks there, we've got some oak smoke, oak barreled chunks from whiskey barrels, and some regular oak as well. And just waiting for that to come up to temperature over here, which should be probably in about another 15 minutes or so. Then we're going to pop the hot coals over here. In terms of the cooking time today, I reckon we'll probably be, it'll be going for something like 5 hours, but we won't be leaving it to chance. One of the worst briskets I ever cooked was the first ones, and the reason that it wasn't particularly good is because I didn't use any thermometers or anything. So we've got a digital thermometer, and what we're going to do is put it on and then check temperature, wait for it to come up to about late 50s, probably 160, and then pull it and wrap it, and that will help to keep it hopefully nice and moist, because there's not a lot of fat on there. Other than that, we'll give you some more tips along the way, but that should be about it for now. Right guys, welcome back. Here we go. The coals are white hot now, ready to be put over on top. I'm going to try and keep them over one side so that we don't burn all the way through all of them to begin with, but we'll go and do that now. I'll see you in a minute. Right, I'm just checking different zones, different areas of the grill, just to make sure that we've got quite a balanced temperature. It's not too bad actually. We're running slightly hotter, sort of over towards the back edge, saying to around about 265, and down here we're probably one of the sort of colder areas. It's sort of saying 225 probably, but it's stabilising out pretty well. I'm just going to go and get the water pan in and get the meat on. Alright, the water pan's now in. I know I said about this before in the ribs video. It's not essential, some people don't put it in there. I have had better results with the pan in. It's always best to put hot water in. It doesn't have to be boiling, but obviously the hotter it is, the less the coals have to do to heat it up, so it's a bit more efficient. But what it acts as a stabiliser, it acts as a temperature stabiliser, sort of gives you a bit more control over the temperature on the left side of the grill. It also helps just to keep things slightly moist. Some people put beer in there. I don't particularly know if that has too much effect, because I don't think the steaming is that aggressive, but it also acts as a drip pan as well, so if anything does drip down, it makes it easier for you to clean up. So the wood's on. We've got coals over there hot and ready to go. We've also got coals over this part, which will, gradually the coals will work round. It just means you don't have to keep on checking it. There's a pretty important rule when you're cooking brisket especially. It's pretty simple. It's basically, if you're looking, you're not cooking, so don't keep checking it. I'm going to put this on, get the lid on, and then we're going to leave it for at least a couple of hours just to see how that bark's coming on. So I shall see you shortly. Alright, brisket's on. The only thing I did was just bunched it slightly, just sort of presented it a little bit better, because it was quite long and thin. I've just pushed it up a little bit because it will actually sort of hold its form quite well and cook like that. Fat side up, as I said, or the fattier of the two sides. There wasn't an awful lot of fat, but that's going to go now. I've put the thicker end slightly closer to the hot coals at the moment, just to give it a better chance of cooking more evenly. But the lid's going to go on, and we'll watch to make sure it comes up and stays at the right temperature. But if I swing it round, make sure I don't touch it. What I'm going to do is actually probe it with a temperature gauge this end, just to make sure the temperature stays fairly solid. Annoyingly, this barbecue has got a lid hook inside so that you can hook it on the handle. I never bother doing that because you always just end up kicking it over anyway. But that hook for the lid is always in the wrong place. It doesn't really matter where you do it. I'd ideally like to have the vent probably over here somewhere, and the temperature gauge down here, so it's not directly over the coals, because it'll give you a fairly false reading. But if I do that, the hook which is there just completely carves up your meat. So yeah, that's the only thing I'd say is a bit of a pain in the backside. Other than that, I'm going to watch the temperature come up, keep an eye on the time. It's just gone midday, so I'm probably going to check back about 2 o'clock, maybe 3. I'll give it plenty of time, and I'll let you know how we get on. Okay, as I mentioned, the temperature's crept up. It's nearly at 300 now. That could well be because this is obviously over the side where we've got the coals. It's probably because the coals have actually started to heat up and work around to this side. So I'm going to open this off and have a look and see how we're doing. Okay. pretty well. There's still some way to go though, because some of the bark hasn't actually, that's not going to be fully crisp, I don't think. Yeah, there's a little bit of crumbing going on, so we've still got a way to go just yet. I wouldn't normally have pulled it at this stage, but I just wanted to double check on it because it is quite a small piece. The wood's still going nicely, it's just ever so wispy, the smoke, which is perfect for this. So I'm going to get a probe in there and get the lid back on. Right, the probe's in, I've got it into, well, about halfway down. I've angled it so it's probably somewhere in the centre there now. I'm just going to give that a little spritz, then I'm going to get the lid back on. Just going to give it a little spritz because I'm a bit concerned the temperature might have just got up on it a little bit. And if that is the case, I want to make sure we do keep it nice and moist. Just while that probe comes up to temperature and settles. Alright, let's get the lid back on. It's starting to look a lovely colour. Yeah, as you can see, the fire's moved right round, so that's why we're showing quite a high reading now. So I'm going to swing, trying to avoid the brisket. Just going to swing the lid around. I hope things settle down okay. See what our temperature gauge is saying. Still a way to go, though. It's probably about 8 degrees off 160, so we've still got quite a way to go. I'd say that's probably going to be, that could be 45 minutes yet, so I'm just going to keep an eye on that. Come and check it, and we're going to take it off when it hits about 160. Alright folks, we're back outside, hopefully for not too long because it's absolutely hammering it down. And we have come up to temperature. We're sitting at 161 now. It's actually been a full 4 hours we've been going. That's the internal temperature of the meat. We've been going for 4 hours. I actually re-probed a different area of the beef just because I wanted to get a second opinion, and that was a good job I did really, because yeah, that wasn't quite right. So I'll take the lid off. Look at that now. It's a really good even bark. It's a really dark mahogany rich colour all over, and that now is pretty perfect, ready to be taken off and wrapped. There's none of that coming off now. It's absolutely perfect. There's no grains, it's just a little bit oily. We obviously gave it a little bit of a spritz a couple of times as well. I'm really looking forward to getting that wrapped and keeping the juices in. Okay folks, here we go. This is what 4 hours of smoking on the brisket looks like. As I said before, the smoking was pretty gentle. There wasn't anything, it wasn't billowing out, and I wasn't adding too much on, but that's where we're at with it. So what I've done here is I've prepared the chopping board. I just laid it over with a couple of pieces running one way, sort of vertically, and a piece that's running left to right as well. There's no right or wrong way of doing this, but I'm using grease-proof paper. You've seen a lot of videos in America, they use butcher's paper. I've tried this method before and it's absolutely perfect. So what I'm going to do is just roll this up one way, and then I'm going to roll it the other way and end up with a nice long sausage that's going to be well wrapped, keep a lot of this moisture in. But what it's also going to do is allow it to breathe a little bit as well. I think sometimes if you wrap it in foil, what that can do is it can make it sweat a lot, and it kind of steams it. We don't want to do that because then you can lose a lot of the bark. I mean, that bark is absolutely amazing. You don't want to go losing that and it running off. So yeah, using the greaseproof paper, it allows it to sort of breathe a little bit more, and that's what we're going to go for. Okay, so we're all wrapped up. We went one way, then the other. I've actually just gone back over the other way as well, making sure I keep the ends tucked in. I've actually left it now so that what was the top, the fat side, I've now put that so that it's down. So we've just inverted it just to change it up, and I'm going to put a probe in the top there. Get it through the paper. Just want it to go somewhere in the middle, so I'm going to put that back on and hopefully get a reading somewhere similar to what I had before. Alright, so the probe's now just been put back into a similar part from where I had it before. You can see it's just crept up slightly, but that's going to now go back outside, and I'm going to leave it and by calculation it probably should be another couple of hours until we see that get up to 200. Getting close. This is the agonising bit now. Just going to wait for it to tick over 200. The pit has started to really die down now. It's died back to about 220, so I don't want to take the lid off though, because at this stage I just want it to keep on creeping up. Just tick over 200 and I'm going to pull it probably about another 10 minutes. It's actually been just over 6 hours now, so a little bit longer, but fairly adverse conditions today. It's been pretty wet and windy and it's done pretty well. So as soon as it gets off, we'll be wrapping it up in towels, just 2 towels. I'm going to put it in this cooler just to insulate it for the next 2 hours. So I've been waiting for too long, but bingo! There we go, finished up on about 220 it was, so I didn't want to lift the lid though, there was no point. But those coals have done pretty well, to be honest. I could have lifted it and given it another going over, a bit of a rake out and got the heat up again a little bit, but there wasn't much point because we were only going to go a few degrees. That's what we're looking like now. I'm going to get that wrapped up. Alright, so this is what it all comes down to. This is our wrapped brisket. It's been resting for over 2 hours now, so it should be amazing. This is still really, really hot, sort of quite damp from where it's been resting. So time to unwrap and see what we're working with. There we go, there's the wrapped brisket. Wonderfully just wrapped and kept nice and tender. And this is it, the finished article. I'm going to slice it in a moment, but you can see the bark is still wonderfully dark and it's just adhered to it really, really well. Alright guys, it's not too easy to do this because obviously I'm carving and trying to record at the same time, but what I've done is I've taken off this end here, which is definitely the tougher end. It's actually gone a little bit drier up this end. I'm not too worried. I took that off of the end, so the actual piece came sort of up here somewhere. I've taken those off. We're going to use that for burnt ends, like I said before, that's the plan. But look at some of these slices in the centre here, which is that's where you really get the money. You see the wonderful smoke ring. If you take one of these pieces out, you see just how amazing that is. That should definitely fold over. Then when you pull at it, it should just come apart. It is wonderfully composed. It's a really, really nice piece of meat actually. And I'm just going to try a bit from the middle there. It's a little bit of fat on the bottom there, but it doesn't matter, you can cut that off. It's absolutely delicious. I'll have that with a bit of the barbecue sauce that I've made in the other video. I made that today. I'm going to do that in some rolls now. Okay folks, we're into the last moments of bringing this brisket together. I've got a pan here. I'm just making a quick sauce to just to soften and glaze the burnt end pieces. What I've used here is some of the master sauce that I made earlier, which is in the other video. I just poured some of that in to a fairly small frying pan just to give us a base and to warm things up. I've added into that a little bit of beef stock. I also added in just a little bit of additional stock from a sauce I made last week, and it's kind of just up to you really, but I'm going to put some beer into it as well. Just got a can of craft IPA, and I'm just going to cook that just until the beer taste isn't so bitter. If it does need adjustment, you can always adjust it just using some honey or some brown sugar. Okay, so I'm just bringing these burnt ends over. I've just transferred them into the sauce I've made and giving them a good coat. And then they're ending up in this pan here, which is going to go in the oven just to set the glaze on the top. Okay, tray full of burnt ends, just about to go into the oven. I've just put the oven at sort of, what is it, 160, 170 centigrade. So a bit hotter than they were at before. It's about 400. But we're not going to leave it for long, 10 minutes, and should just set the glaze.